Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. So today we're going to give you a full review on our Mahindra tractor that's a 2540L model number.
All right, so the model we have is a 2540L. It's a four-wheel drive tractor, meaning that it's got two-wheel drive or an option to go into four-wheel drive. We got the one with the front end loader that I had to ask Kanan. It's about 1,000-pound lift capacity, give or take. She's got a PTO in the back. Our model is a shuttle shift. You can get these in a hydrostatic, but they're not going to be quite a 40 horse. It's like a 38 because you give up a couple more horse when you go to a hydrostatic. We paid an extra like $600 for the roof canopy because I wanted one. You can probably get by without one, but we do have one. And then we also got an optional box blade with ours for an extra like $300. It's a 12-speed, meaning that it has a low, medium, and high range in addition to your 1 through 4 gears. Some of the bigger tractors you can go as much as I think 16 or 20 gear. My dad's is like a 46 horse. It's another brand that we'll do in another video, and he actually has 16 speeds to his. So up until about 40 horse, I think 12 speed tends to be about the norm. This thing will run all kinds of implements off the PTO. We've done balers, we've done hay cutters, we've done rakes. We're going to find out how well it does with a wood chipper here when hopefully the snow melts one of these days. Overall, it's a pretty easy, no frills kind of tractor. The only thing digital on it is just the little hour display. It doesn't do a lot of real fancy stuff. All we were looking for is a real basic tractor, and the Mahindra really comes through with that.
So we'll kind of look at the engine here. Now this is a 2-liter engine. It's an inline 4-cylinder diesel, and really it's pretty simple. It is fuel injected. You can see the computers and a lot of the relays in that up here. This contains your air filter, which is just a standard cartridge filter. Nothing really special. You could probably get one of these in most major brands through an auto parts store pretty easily. Now looking up in here, you've got some of your systems in that. There's coolant. I mean, it's really nothing major. I guess if you worry about having to run a diesel tractor in that, it's not much different from a diesel truck or a car, and it's really not going to be that different from an actual automobile. It does have a cooling system. It does have a filter on the fuel or the diesel itself, and it does have an oil filter. Everything in here is pretty easily maintained. You can see that we've kind of put it to use. So we have about 200 hours on this tractor already, and it's ready for its second service, second major oil change for the engine. That muffler's there. Nothing, I guess, don't be scared about this. It's very well put together, and the maintenance on it really isn't that hard to keep track of. So if I take off the side cover here, which goes on, you can see there's a grommet right down in here. There's 2 pins that go in, and it falls down the slot. Very easy to take off so you can get to everything. And this again is your diesel filter. So on the bottom it does have a connector here. So in order to change this, you just pop that connector out, and then it's just a spin-on filter like you would do changing the oil or something else. This here is the primer at the top. And one of the things I don't like about this tractor is that it always seems like I have a harder time getting the diesel system to prime up. And I don't know if it's something that I didn't do very well at when I changed these filters or not. But I always have a little bit of a weep down here at the bottom. And then I also have trouble getting this. So I have to get about 6 pumps just to get the kind of the system primed up. Not a big deal, but it's kind of one of those things you have to learn along the way that you have to take care of, check for weeps, don't over tighten everything, and then get everything going. All right, so here's looking at the opposite side. Pretty simple coolant reservoir there. You've got your alternator and your oil filter. Now this is a similar thing to changing oil on a car. So if you've ever done that, it's pretty simple. You basically just unscrew the filter and it goes right down. I guess one of the things I would hope would be better is having a better catch pan for the oil, because it leaks down the block and then it's just a booger to try and get all of that oil back off. Otherwise it's pretty simple to do, nothing major, and it's just a spin-on filter just like you'd find on any normal car or truck.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the stuff that I actually use on it, since I don't do any of that pesky maintenance stuff. So the front end loader is, it's roughly a 6-foot loader. It's not too bad. Usually it's got a guide rod up through, yeah, it usually fits up through there. And ours, we don't know if it came overly tightened and I didn't notice the first couple times. Anyway, it got bent, so I don't actually use it. But for people that are used to using a guide rod, it does have one. We just jerked ours off of there, and I've gotten used to, from where I sit, seeing bucket position to be able to drive it. All right, so from up here, which is where I spend most of my time on this thing, it's a pretty standard display. You can kind of see, I don't have it on, but right here is the only digital thing on the entire tractor. That is your hour meter. You've got, of course, you've got your ignition down here, your speed selector. You've got your PTO engagement, which is kind of an interesting little push button. Most tractors now have just a push button to engage it. Down on this side, you've got a horn, which I like to use when I'm bothering the goats or the dogs. You've got turn signals, and you do have high and low beams on your front lights. Down below is your pretty normal stuff. Clutch, brake, emergency brake, and a little go fast juice. And then of course right here is your forward, backwards, neutral. Over on this side, that is your bucket control. Now, we used to have a really nice little bucket control that actually came with the tractor and had a nice big black knob on it. This was my biggest pain in the butt when we got this tractor. I don't know what they do when they make these things, but the darn thing never threaded in very well or very tight. So within the first couple months, we lost it. Driving down the road, found it, put it back on. Probably our fault for not really Loctiting it in there, but when we went and cut hay in the back field, we lost it somewhere in 8 acres. I'm convinced that one day I will find it in a bale of hay, but until that time, Cannon has found us a handy little bolt, and it is Loctited in there, and it works. Yeah. It ain't beautiful, but it works.
Right, so this actual aluminum piece was cast, and the threads inside were not well developed. So in order to fix it, after the second time of losing the handle, like Nikki said, what I ended up doing is getting the correct tap. Now this is metric, so I did basically cut new threads in it, put the bolt in. This is something I just had in the garage, so it worked, and it's continued work. So maybe one day we'll actually replace the rod correctly, but recut the threads, put the bolt in with some blue Loctite versus red. You don't have to do crazy red, but do some blue, and then it's stayed in there, and it's good enough that we get by with it, but it's just not as fancy as like a nice long rod. I think it was like this long with a nice handle on that.
It wasn't quite that long, but it was much longer than what I got. Okay, and on the left side of the driver's seat, so this is where you're going to have your four-wheel drive on-off. Really kind of nice. Some of the tractors, like the LS model that my dad's got, the four-wheel drive selector is like way down on the floor, and the labeling is turned a different direction. Just a pain. That, and I think his is exactly opposite. So if it's pulled up, it's off. If it's down, it's engaged, which is the opposite of what we've got here. And then you've got your PTO off on selector knob as well. On the right side of the tractor, you've got the, let me see if I can get in on that. You got your 1 through 4 with your neutral selector knob. There is your range shifter. So like I said, there's low, neutral, medium, and high, because this is a 12 speed. So what that means is in every one of these ranges, low, medium, which you can't see, there we go, and high, you have 1 through 4 from the selector knob in each one of those ranges. That's what makes it a 12 speed. This little beauty down here, this is what's going to lower and raise your PTO. And it's also got this handy little table that kind of tells you, based on what you're using, what kind of RPM speed on the dash you should be using, and in what speed, which is kind of handy. Some tractors don't have that, which I always think makes this a little bit more new user friendly. So as you can see on ours, pretty no frills cab. You can get an enclosed cab for these things, We didn't see any reason to. Like I said, I did pay the extra money for the canopy, which has been kind of nice in the summer when we've done hay and whatnot. But pretty much a no frills kind of thing. If I had to make one complaint about the cab area compared to a lot of the other tractor brands, no cup holder. Like seriously, when you're sitting on the tractor all day doing hay and stuff, man, what I wouldn't give for just a cup holder, a place to put the iPod, something, man. But that is the one thing that we don't have on here that I kind of wish we did. And then of course back here is the business end, or the other business end of the tractor, and this is where your PTO linkage and all that fun stuff is. I won't go into all that, but pretty basic PTO setup, fully adjustable. They give you the fancy little triangle. Something that a lot of older tractors don't have is turn signals. These guys do. All the newer tractors do. So I've got emergency flashers if I'm moving this thing on the road, which is kind of nice because in the state of Oregon, as long as you have emergency flashers and the safety triangle, you do not need an escort.
Now, from a maintenance standpoint, some of the things I've actually had to kind of overcome was that tractors, when they do a lot of the stuff, the PTO shakes this tractor pretty darn well. So you can see that clip right here has been safety wired. I've actually had to go through and replace, I would bet, about half of these clips on the backside that are dealing with the back of it. You know, these R clips are good for what they do, but I will just warn you, take a lot of time to really go over everything, especially after your first time using it, because these clips, I had to replace all these R clips. They just vibrated out. They're just not going to stay there. You can see that one there is good. That one there, I actually had to replace both of those from what they came with. So just be prepared. This thing shakes enough that all of these little clips in that are going to back out, and you're going to lose half of them unless you take a lot of care to either safety wire them or put something on that's a closed end clip versus just like these simple R clips. And again, they're called an R just because they're shaped like an R. That's all it is.
Okay, so beyond that stuff, overall, I love the tractor. She runs fine. I don't really have any problems with it. If you're going to do a lot of stuff that's not true farming, like if you're mostly just using the loader, if you're not doing a lot of PTO work, I probably would have gone with the hydrostatic. It's just easier for forward and back. If you don't know what a hydrostatic is, think of it as like a lot of the newer lawnmowers, like the big riding lawnmowers. It's depressing the pedal forward to go forward and back to go backwards. It's kind of a tilt deal. And that's what they told us when we actually were shopping for it. Like a lot of the guys around here that hobby farm, which is what they classify us, if you're pushing a lot of snow with it, or just using a lot of loader stuff, they really recommend that you use the hydrostatic just because it's easier. They also recommend a lot of times that women use the hydrostatic, mostly because the clutch is tough, at least when you're first getting it broke in, and I have bad knees from playing basketball already. So at the end of a long day of driving forward, backwards, doing a lot of stuff, man, my knee is killing me. So on those days, I think, oh man, what I wouldn't give for a hydrostatic. But on the days that you're out cutting hay or grading a road or doing a lot of stuff where you're basically trying to maintain a steady speed for a long distance, you cannot go wrong with the shuttle shift. And that is why we ended up buying it, is because I knew long term we wanted to do hay and this thing was for road maintenance. The other thing I cannot stand about this tractor, and it's one of the things that drives me the most crazy in the winter, is compared to like the skid steer that you turn and it counts down your glow plug, or my dad's LS where, you know, if you turn the key it tells you right away based on air temperature that it wants to glow, and you turn it and hold it until it quits glowing, and it basically tells you what it's doing. This thing, I don't know if it's just me, but this thing doesn't seem to have a rhyme or reason to it. It never tells you if it needs to glow. Most of the time, if it's under 40 degrees, if you've had a tractor, you know it needs to anyway. But when you turn it, it'll light up and then immediately go off. So you don't really know, am I glowing? Am I not glowing? How long should I be counting? I've gone through the manual. There's not a real good definition in there, which kind of makes me a little cranky. Usually in the winter, I'm actually not using it a of a lot. Our ground is kind of funky and it turns into a sponge, and I've buried it a couple of times already since we've had it. So generally, if I'm doing anything, we're snow blowing with Dad's tractor, which like I said, does it on its own. And I'm doing stuff with the Bobcat, which counts down and tells me on its own what it needs to do. But that would be, in cold climates, one of my biggest complaints about the Mahindra is just getting to know when to glow and how long to glow to get those plugs hot enough to actually get the stupid thing to start. Because that has been an issue a couple of times. But other than that, I love her. She's a pretty basic tractor. One of the reasons we got it, had a killer warranty on it, pretty well recommended, and was in our price point and had a good financing program because honestly, we financed it.
So I think from maintenance, which is probably the one thing that I do a lot of, and again, I covered kind of like designing your homestead for maintenance. It's pretty applicable of everything you do for a normal vehicle. So if you're now doing your own oil changes on your farm trucks or your vehicles and that, what you do there is pretty applicable to a tractor. There's nothing really vastly different. The Mahindra manual that we do have for this does give some information out there. It's not perfect, and I don't know that there's a manual out there that really is, but it does tell you the frequency to change stuff, and it's really, I think about 50 hours is when you first do your major stuff, and it's really kind of changing almost every fluid in there. So like a vehicle in that, or when you get to that 100,000 mile warranty kind of deal, it's pretty darn pricey on that first one, but after that, it's not very frequent that you change stuff. I think I changed the oil at about 50 hours or so, and then it was like 200 where we're at now. Now, speaking of the oil change, there are 2 drain plugs on this. One of them I could not get out, and I don't know if it was Loctite in there or whatever it was. I could get one out so I could drain most of the oil out, and that's kind of a complaint, and I don't know if it's a quality thing or not. Pretty minute, but I really felt like I couldn't break it loose by hand, and I was afraid to take a impact to it and strip the thing out, and then all of a sudden you're at 50 hours when I did it. I thought, oh my gosh, if I strip this drain plug out of this oil, this is a very expensive thing. So I just kind of did the one, and maybe I'll try it at the 200 hour, I'm not sure. Otherwise, changing the filters is pretty easy. Like I said, they're spin-on. I have never gotten a filter between the oil and the diesel that doesn't leak some point. And it drips down everything. So again, it's not too bad. I mean, I almost want to say that's typical for a farm, but in my mind, it shouldn't be so hard to get a filter to not leak. And again, I've done everything I've done with automotive. It shouldn't be specific. Like she said, there's nothing in the manual when she's looked up stuff. So my thinking is it's either some kind of a surface, or you've really got to really tighten the snot out of these filters to get them to seal, which it shouldn't. So just be prepared for that. If it weeps a little oil or diesel in that, it's par for the course, unfortunately.
And another thing you might want to know is when he went back for the first service to buy all the stuff at the Mahindra dealer, basically they told him not to do half of the maintenance that was recommended in the manual, which I guess is pretty normal, but to make sure you don't void your warranty, check with your dealer, especially the dealer that's going to handle any warranty issues. So that's what we've done to make sure our warranty stayed in good shape. We just went through and had the dealer tell us what they require for us to do on maintenance to keep our warranty intact. Because, as they said, a lot of the stuff that they're telling you to do, like replacing some filters and stuff, that at 50 hours probably really didn't need it. So she told Kaden at that point, yeah, don't do that. Do this to clean some of this stuff and do that to clean some of this stuff and just roll with it. So just know that going into that, man, if you look at the manual, it's going to cost you, what, $500 or $600 is what we figured for the first service. And I think we got out for like 200, 150, something like that. So just keep that in mind. If you buy a new one, you probably want to go ahead and check with your dealer.
Yeah. And then really, you don't need any special tools to do all the maintenance on it. It is metric. It is made in India, so it's come over. It is a metric system with everything. So if you don't have metric tools, you'll have to invest in those. But other than that, it's basic sockets, wrenches. There's nothing specific that you can't do with a basic socket set to this tractor itself to keep it maintained.
And we found that some of the filters you can actually buy on Amazon, which has been kind of nice because if you're familiar at all with going to the dealership, whether it be cars, tractors, motorcycles, whatever, you know the dealership gets a hefty percentage rate. So yeah, we found some of those filters that we needed for almost half. And they are Mahindra licensed actual filters. They're not knockoffs, but much cheaper on
Yeah,
Amazon.
Absolutely. So if you made it to this far in the video, you're going to be asking yourself, would we buy again this tractor? And the answer is absolutely. I think we would buy it. For the value we've got out of it, it's pretty low cost of maintenance other than it's kind of aggravating. At least for me it is. I feel like I would buy this, and if somebody said, hey, would you buy that tractor, I would recommend it. I've been very happy with this tractor from what I do with it, and I'm not the primary driver, but from my standpoint, yes, I think it's a pretty good buy on what we've done with it.
Overall, we'd probably give it about a 4 out of 5 stars because she's not perfect. Obviously, there's little things that we both find aggravating. Is there a perfect tractor out there? I don't know. We priced an awful lot out of them, looked at an awful lot of them. I don't really like tractors that are mostly made of plastic as far as, you know, your knobs and handles and stuff. That really doesn't sit well with me because it is sitting outside. You know, I want durable stuff. So yeah, we'd give it a 4 out of 5, but I would recommend it again. I would, however, say if there's a woman under about 5'6" planning to drive it, I might look at something a little different. You're just going to spend an awful lot of time perched on the very edge of the seat, and that seat doesn't adjust forward any further, just because you have to get the clutch engaged and stuff. If you're going to get a similar model in a hydrostatic and you're under 5'6", you can probably make that work. But I do know that there are a couple of different tractor companies that make a tractor that has an adjustable seat or adjusts up further than the one we have. So you might want to keep that in mind just in case there's a lady that's going to be driving it that's a little shorter. Now, the smaller tractor versions, like I said, we've got a 40 horse. If you're using it for just a hobby farm and getting a smaller one, some of the smaller ones either adjust further forward or don't have as big of a leg gap, and you might find that that might be a better option for you than something as big as a 40. Well, I think that's all we've got. If you've got questions about it that we didn't cover, feel free to leave it down in the comments, and we will be happy to get back to you. We've had ours, 3 years now?
About
3.5?
Yeah.
Retail on it back in the day was
24,000, I think.
26, I think, with the loader is what we financed out. They, prices change, and I think last time we looked, they're a little bit higher than that. Still worth it with the warranty. But like I said, if you have other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. We'd be happy to answer them for you. Hope that helped. If you're considering one of these, go ahead and get one. You won't be disappointed with it.
Nope.
That's it from Sprague Homestead, and we will see you next time. Happy homesteading.